it's Eleanor Hode here, working with Sir Hayley, the Friends of Handsworth Park and the Active Wellbeing Society. So I'm back from Handsworth Park where I've been picking lime flowers. So I've got a tray of them in front of me here. Now the lime tree, it's not related at all to the citrus lime. It's also known as the linden tree, or Tilia is the family in Latin. So it blossoms at this time of year. We're just into the middle of June and we've had a bit of sunshine. So when the blossoms come out on the lime tree, it's a very short time that they're open for, around a week, could be a little bit longer. So these are really good to go and harvest now. So when you're looking for a lime tree to identify, they're often planted as street trees. So they're the ones that nobody wants to park their car under, because the aphids that live on them often make your car sticky. It's those ones. They are often planted down our streets and in our parks. Obviously if you're harvesting, a street isn't the best place because of the car fumes, and wherever you do pick, make sure it's somewhere away from a road and away from an area that's likely to have been sprayed. So let's just have a look at what they look like. So the leaves are quite distinctive. They're kind of heart-shaped, quite large on this variety. There are varieties with smaller leaves, and they have jagged teeth around the edge. They often have a lot of growth from the base of the tree. Sometimes it's cut back, but sometimes it's left. So you might see sprouts like this coming from the bottom of the tree. And if you look at the branch, you'll see that the leaves are alternate like that. They're not in pairs, they're alternate. And the branches almost grow in a very slight zigzag shape. So that's the young branches. They get quite woody as they get older, but you can just see what the leaves and the branches look like with their heart-shaped leaves. Now the flowers, when you walk under a lime tree at this time of year, you should get a really delicious, heady, floral scent from all those flowers, and you might hear a lot of insects and bees around the tree. The smell is really delicious. I've got this tray in front of me and it smells so lovely. So the flowers form coming out from the leaf point, and they have a bract, this is called. It kind of looks like a leaf, and it's a lot paler than the leaves, and it's long and thin. And then the blossoms just hang down, and they're creamy yellow with little darker pieces with the pollen on and the little stamens. You want to pick them just when you see at least one of these flowers has opened. If the other two are still in buds, that's fine, it's still good to use. And it's quite helpful when you're going picking them to take some scissors and just snip them into a basket. You need to pick on a dry day. Now we've had a lot of rain this week, so sometimes that can be tricky with these flowers, catching a time where it's nice and dry. So you want the morning dew to have dried, a bit of sun to have got on them, so kind of late morning is usually a good time on a dry day. You don't want to pick them damp. They're going to be harder to work with then, they're going to be harder to preserve. You want them nice and dry and smelling very fresh and fragrant. And you want to catch them before they start to turn brown. Now, why do you want to pick these? It's because these flowers are incredibly good for relaxation and calm. They're really good for nervous stress and anxiety, particularly if you've been on the go or you've been worrying. They're particularly good for children, particularly children who are suffering with insomnia or hyperactivity or being a bit fractious. And because it's very sweet, the flavour of the tea, it's very good for children. It's very widely used as a herbal remedy for children and adults. So if you're somebody who, if you feel stressed, you start to get a bad tummy ache, digestion problems, this can be really soothing. It's also good for hot flushes. If you make tea and let it cool and drink it cool, put it in the fridge, it's a very lovely summery fragrant floral drink for that. So what do you do with it? So you can use it fresh to make tea. You just want to use a teaspoonful, which is just a few of them, in some boiling water. So put some fresh into a cup, cover with boiling water, leave to steep for 10 minutes at least, and then drink it. And the other thing you can do, because it's such a short amount of time that it's there, is to dry them. So I'm going to dry most of these. I use a dehydrator to dry them. But if you don't have a dehydrator, these will dry quite easily in a brown paper bag, as long as you don't put too many in. Put in a brown paper bag and hang up with lots of warm air circulating. That will help it dry. Or you can spread it out on newspaper somewhere warm and dry. If you have an airing cupboard, that's a good place to dry them. And once they're dry, just store it in a jar out of direct sunlight. Put a label on what it is and when you picked it so you'll remember. But the smell of them, oh, it's just lovely and really calming, and that might be really just what we need at the moment when we've all been feeling rather worried and anxious about what's going on around us and in the world today. There's lots of legends and folklore around the linden tree. It's said if you fall asleep under one, you might wake up in Fairyland, which is quite a nice idea. And if you smell them, you might get the idea of that, because it is such a fragrant, heady smell. So I'm going to dry most of this, but I'm also going to show you how to make a tincture, because that's a good way to also to preserve it, and you can use drops of this in water if ever you're feeling anxious or stressed. So with making a tincture, you're just looking for really the best flowers, the best material you can. I'm using a glass jar with a lid and a good seal, and this has been cleaned with boiling hot water to make sure it's sterilised. So you're just going to pack in your flowers. Now, tincture is usually made with alcohol. The preferred one usually is vodka, but you can use other things like rum, which is what I'm going to use today. So you just pack it in like this, and then I'm going to cover it with rum. And you want to make sure all of the plant material is covered, because anything that's sticking out into the air is likely to go mouldy or to rot. So once you've poked it in, you want to make sure it's all covered. Now the linden, because of the way that these are, you can see the shape. When you poke them into the alcohol, they tend to stick up. So you may want to weigh them down to stay under the alcohol. If you don't want to use alcohol, or if you want to give this to children, another thing you can do instead of preserving it in alcohol is you can preserve it in glycerine, and that will be making a glycerite. So glycerine is a vegetable-based product. It's quite thick, you can see in there. It's quite viscous, but it's quite sweet. So you would just do the same process. You would just cover your plant material in the glycerine and then leave it to steep. So I'm going to top this up because it needs a little bit more to cover it. And I may put a little bit more plant material in there. So you need to leave this for 2 weeks just to steep. And when you remember, preferably every day, you want to give it a little shake and just check on it and make sure that all of the plant material is below the alcohol or below the glycerine. And then when that's ready in 2 weeks, you strain it. You can compost the plant material and the reserve liquid, store it preferably in a dark glass jar, or at the very least out of the sunlight, and that will keep for at least a year. Label it up, and you just take a few drops a couple of times a day, depending on the condition that you have. So we'll leave that there. You may come across tea made from this. It's often called Linden Tea. You can often buy this just in my local shops. They sell it, but it's really much better if you can find your own, because you'll connect with the plant then much better, and it will have a really powerful, much more powerful effect on you if you've picked that yourself, processed it yourself, and then you take it into your body. Just making it and smelling it while you're making it is pretty therapeutic, I think. So I'd love to know how you get on, whether you find some lime trees. We do have plenty of them around us in the city. So let me know what you make with your lime flowers. Bye!